For many years, I was an expert at applauding from the sidelines. My greatest skill was making myself invisible so that he could shine brighter. I celebrated his victories with an enthusiasm I never reserved for my own, because I had internalized the dangerous lesson that true love was synonymous with sacrifice. To the outside world, we were the perfect power couple of a rising tech startup. He was the visionary, the charismatic face who charmed investors. I was the silent architect, the unofficial CEO who transformed his ethereal visions into spreadsheets, ironclad contracts, and tangible reality. I remember one night, about 2 years before the end, we were at a dinner with potential investors. With a gleam in his eye, he told the story of the company's founding. He spoke of the night he had the idea of the first prototype he built in the garage, and I was there, smiling and nodding, like a proud supporting actress. He forgot to mention that the garage was at my parents' house, that the money for the prototype came from selling a vintage car my grandfather left me, and that I had written the initial lines of code myself, through countless sleepless nights, while he slept the sleep of dreamers. That night, when one of the investors turned to me and asked, "And what's your role in all this?" he answered for me, with an arm around my shoulders, "She's my everything, my support, my rock." And everyone smiled, finding it romantic. And I smiled too, feeling a strange chill in my soul. The company was registered in my name. "It's a formality, my love," he said, with his irrefutable logic. "It's a tax shield for us, a smart strategy." And I, the smart and understanding partner, agreed. I signed where he pointed, believing that us was a real and balanced entity. But not everything is as it seems. Some betrayals arrive like a clap of thunder, a violent flash of light that splits the sky and announces the storm. They are loud, undeniable, and leave a trail of destruction for all to see. But there are others, the kind that roll in like fog. They advance silently, stealthily, enveloping everything in a damp, cold veil until, suddenly, you realize you can no longer see a foot in front of you. You don't know exactly when it began, only that you are lost. My story began like that, with the deceptive beauty of a photograph, an image of a perfectly blue sky sent from a distant paradise. And it ended, definitively, with the dry, irrevocable sound of my pen gliding across a sheet of paper. And before I tell you how that fog lifted in the most staggering way, if you love stories about plot twists and overcoming adversity, hit the like button now so you don't miss a single detail of what's to come. Clarity is a gift that often comes wrapped in pain. Before I could unwrap it, I lived for a long time immersed in that fog of self-deception. It began, as it always does, subtly. So subtly that to question it felt like an act of madness. The late-night meetings that stretched until dawn became the norm. His phone, once forgotten in any corner of the house, became an extension of his body, always kept screen down, as if guarding state secrets. One night, we were on the couch, watching a movie. A notification lit up the screen and I saw, out of the corner of my eye, his body tense up. A minimal, but tight movement. He angled the device away from my view. "Who is it?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Work," he replied, without taking his eyes off the television. But the tone was short, final. And that night, a silent battle raged within me. My sharp, precise intuition against my desperate desire to believe in the peace of that couch. A few weeks later, the scent. I was sorting the laundry and the perfume on his shirt collar hit me. It was a floral scent, sweet and expensive, a perfume I didn't wear. That day, I tried to confront him lightly, almost as a joke. "Well now, what fancy client has been hugging you?" I said, smiling. He let out a loud, convincing laugh. "Oh, that was Claudia from the agency. You know how she is. So effusive. She grabbed me to celebrate closing the deal." He made me feel small, jealous, paranoid for noticing such a silly detail. And I shrank. I retreated, the final excuse. The masterpiece of his manipulation came wrapped like a gift for me. "The trip, alone. I need some time to recharge, my love," he said, with a studied seriousness. "I'm exhausted, and I'm doing this for us, for the good of the company. 1 week of rest and I'll come back at full strength. And I, the ideal partner, the understanding rock, not only agreed but encouraged him. I helped him research destinations, buy the tickets, pack his bags. Every piece of clothing I folded and placed in his suitcase was an act of denial. I denied the knots in my stomach. I denied the low, insistent voice in my head. I denied it because the hope of being wrong was, at that moment, the only thing keeping me upright. He had barely left and the silence of the house already weighed on me like something physical. I tried to keep busy. I arranged the books, watered the plants, answered emails, but an invisible force, a current of dread, pulled me towards his office. It wasn't an intention to snoop. It was the need to confirm a truth my soul already knew. And there it was on the mahogany desk, his laptop, open. He had forgotten to close it in his rush to leave for his paradise. And then, it pinged. A notification from the messaging app lit up the screen. My heart stopped before my eyes could even focus. It wasn't a work email. It was a photograph of him in a business class seat, with a wide, genuine smile, a smile I hadn't seen in months. And next to him, with her head resting on his shoulder, was her, the woman with the floral perfume. The caption was a punch to the gut. Finally, our vacation, my love, and below it, an ocean of messages that I began to read with a sickening calm. They weren't just declarations of love. They were plans. When I get back, we'll talk to her for good. With the money from the deal we just closed, we can make a down payment on our apartment. I can't wait to build our life, away from all this. Our money, our apartment, our life. He spoke of me as her, an obstacle to be removed. In that instant, the sound of the world disappeared. There was only a high-pitched ringing in my ears. I felt the air grow thick, heavy, as if someone had replaced my lungs with stones. Every breath was a conscious decision, a monumental effort to prove to myself that I was still alive. It was a feeling of depersonalization, as if I were floating above my own body, watching a pale, trembling woman discover that her entire reality was a fraud. Trauma, as I learned later, is not the event itself. It's the wound that opens up inside you. And in that wound, in that deafening silence, something didn't just break. Something new and terrifying began to be born. It was in that abyss that everything changed. If stories like this inspire you to find your own strength, take a moment and subscribe to the channel. What comes next is proof that the greatest power is born from the deepest pain. The woman who loved unconditionally died in that chair. And, from those ashes, another rose. A woman who would love herself, first and foremost. There were no screams, no suitcases thrown out the window. There was a full night of silent, controlled crying, as if I were releasing an internal pressure to keep from exploding. And at dawn, with the first rays of sun staining the sky, I made a cup of strong, black coffee. And with my hands still shaking, but with an icy determination, I searched online, best corporate lawyer in the city, while his Instagram feed filled with photos of white sand beaches, colorful cocktails, and falsely carefree smiles, my calendar filled with meetings. The first was with the lawyer, a gray-haired man who looked at me with a certain pity at first. A pity that turned into respect, and then admiration, as I calmly unfolded all the articles of incorporation, the registers, the meeting minutes on the table, all in my name. My voice didn't tremble. I wasn't there as a betrayed wife. I was there as the owner of a company, defending my assets. The following weeks were a blur of calculated action. The meeting with the bank manager, the conversation with our accountant, the formal notifications sent to each member of the board of directors. Every step was a move on a chessboard that only I could see. I was entering a world that, until then, I had only watched from the audience. I was using a language of clauses, motions, and litigation that I had learned by osmosis. Over the hundreds of nights I had reviewed documents for him. The pain hadn't disappeared, but it had transformed into fuel. It had crystallized into purpose. The vulnerability of being deceived became the birthplace of my courage. I didn't want revenge, that hot dish of fleeting satisfaction. I wanted justice, the justice of taking back what was mine by right, by work, and by sacrifice. The day of his return arrived. The house was immaculate, silent. I didn't wait for him with tears or accusations. I waited for him sitting in the living room armchair, with a book in my lap and a cup of tea by my side. I chose my outfit carefully. Tailored trousers, a silk blouse, nothing that suggested mourning or seduction. It was an armor of normality, my silent declaration that I was no longer a victim in his play. I was the director of mine. He walked in, tense and beaming, dragging a suitcase and a smile that died the instant he saw me. There was something in my posture, in the calmness of the room, that disarmed him. "Darling," he began, his voice a little unsure. "I missed you so much." The trip was. I cut him off, not with words, but with a gesture. I leaned forward and slid a single leather folder across the coffee table that separated us. "I think you need to catch up on the new board memos," I said, my voice so steady it surprised me. I watched his eyes scan the pages, the initial confusion giving way to disbelief, and then to panic. The notification of his immediate dismissal as CEO, the minutes of the board meeting ratifying my position, the document of exclusive, legal, and irrevocable ownership. "What is this?" he stammered, his face losing all its sun-kissed color. "This is a joke. It's illegal." "No," I replied, and for the first time, I looked him straight in the eye. "What's illegal is using company funds to finance a personal trip with a mistress. This," I paused, letting the weight of the next words land in the air, "is just business." The explosion came as I expected. He yelled, he argued, he tried to blame me, and when the anger ran out, he collapsed into pleading. He cried convulsive, tears of desperation. But I saw it clearly. They weren't tears of remorse for what he did to me, but tears of terror for what he had lost for himself. And for the first time in my life, a man's tears didn't move me. I stood up, picked up my purse, which was already by the door. "Enjoy your vacation," I said, my voice now soft, almost indifferent. "You're going to have a lot of free time from now on." And I closed the door behind me, not with force, but with the gentleness of someone closing a chapter forever. I sold the company 6 months later. I didn't need that empire stained with memories. With part of the money, I started something new. A business of my own, smaller, more authentic, aligned with who I had become. Today, I travel a lot, but not to escape anything, but to find everything. And I've discovered that my own company is, by far, the most fascinating destination. On this journey, a few truths have solidified within me. Lessons that the pain taught me and that peace allowed me to understand. The first lesson is that self-worth is also an asset, and it must be protected with the same ferocity with which you protect a financial asset, with security clauses and non-negotiable boundaries. The second is that true strength is rarely found in the explosion of confrontation. It resides, almost always, in the calm and intelligence with which you recalculate your route in silence. Revenge is a fire that burns fast and leaves nothing behind. Strategic rebuilding is a foundation that lasts forever. And the third lesson, perhaps the most liberating of all, is that closure never depends on a word of apology, on a gesture of remorse from the other person. The only thing necessary for an ending is your decision. You are the one who writes the final period. If at any point in your life you have felt like the invisible foundation in someone else's grand construction, I want you to remember one thing. You have always had within you the strength and the material to be the entire building. If this story resonated with your soul, if you've ever had to tear up a life contract that no longer served you to rewrite your own, comment below. My name, my rules. And if you believe, as I now do, that the biggest and most profitable power play is to invest in yourself, like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories about how we can, together, turn pain into power.